And welcome to the special Media Mash edition of Hannity. Now, the mainstream media in 2012 provided us with some of the most biased examples of left-wing journalism to date, from helping to re-elect President Obama to aiding the administration in various cover-ups. Now, members of the Obama mania media, they were working overtime all year long, and throughout the course of this next hour, we're going to be showing you the lowlights of their so-called hard-hitting reporting. And then later, Brent Bozell from the Media Research Center will reveal the single most outrageous example of media bias from this past year. But first, we bring in our studio audience of experts and analysts. Good to see everybody. Scale of 1 to 10. Quick question. 10 being the most bias. How many would give the media a 10 in terms of its bias? Pat, Les, what do do you say?
I'd say about a good 8.5.
A good 8.5 out of yeah, the microphone helps. We're
yes,
on TV.
It does. Yeah. 8.5.
Yeah. Who else said less than 10? Mary.
No, I didn't say less than
You
10.
think it's 10. You think less than 10.
I think
it's a 9 because I think there are some people in the mainstream media who try and play it straight, which is different than in past.
Yeah, no, that's true. But it's certainly in my lifetime. I don't think it's ever been this bad. I remember, Brent, when we go back to the Reagan days, and Sam Donaldson was always there. Mr. President, did you trade arms for hostages? We don't have those hard-hitting reporters when it comes to Obama.
No, you don't, because they're afraid to. They want access in Washington, D.C. And if you want to have access with this administration, you're not going to have a hard-hitting news report. It's just as simple as that.
But, you know, let's go the night of the election. Let's go to NBC, one of our favorite reporters of all time, Chris Matthews. And, of course, he was thankful. Why was he thankful? For Hurricane Sandy. Watch this.
Good work for them, good work for him, a good day for America. I'm so glad we had that storm last week, because I think the storm was one of those things. No, politically, I should say, not in terms of hurting people. The storm brought in possibilities for good politics.
Thank God for that storm, Denise Burley. Gross, go ahead.
Well, you know what? That is so typical of the left. You know, it's politics over everything else. And Matthew, I mean, here these people suffered great devastation, and all Matthews can think about is how it might have helped Obama. On the other hand, had we said anything like that, that would have just been, I mean, we would have been crucified.
Would have been
right. And in Chris Matthews, you have a man who regularly equates people who disagree with him with being evil. And here he is saying something this egregious, the political advantages of a storm that nearly wiped out the east coast of America.
Yeah, it's pretty sick and it's pretty sad. Jennifer Stefano.
Oh, for sure. And I think the thing that we have to realize with the media is, you made a great point, is for years liberals have had this as an all or nothing proposition, and conservatives were more, well, if our guy doesn't get elected, it's not the end of the world. I think now we see it is the end of the world. And in this past election with President Obama, the media has always been center left. But in this election, they got not just tipping the scales for him, they jumped on it, brought their limousines and everything else they could to bear.
All right, we all talk about Chris Matthews and the thrill that he had up his leg, but here's a guy that also said this president has done everything. Not most things, a lot of things. No. Everything right. Just watch.
This guy's done everything right. He's raised his family right. He's fought his way all the way to the top of the Harvard Law Review. In a blind test, becomes head of the review, the top editor there. Everything he's done is clean as a whistle. He's never not only broken any law, he's never done anything wrong. He's the perfect father, the perfect husband, the perfect American. And all they do is trash the guy.
Pat's dying to get in. Pat, go ahead. Hey, listen, we might as well get down and worship. He's perfect, Pat. I mean...
No. But here's the problem with this. The first clip, the last clip is just him being a fool. The first clip was something the entire country should have seen, against the pictures of the devastation and the deaths. But you know what? This is my problem with the Republicans and against all the people who moan and groan, that instead of wasting their money doing what they do with these stupid ads and consultants, they should be putting that up to the American people so that everybody could see it. You want to stop what's going on, then you hold people accountable personally. You just don't whine about it.
But there was a certain, I can't explain it, but we've covered every aspect of this administration, Mary, and we tried to explain. A president that said Republicans want dirty air and dirty water and grandma over the cliff. I tried to bring these things up on a regular basis, and he got away with all of them. Fox played it, talk radio played it.
Yeah, but you're one guy, and that's the problem. The Republican Party does not know how to fight back. They sit there and they take it, and they get hit over and over and over again, and they just expect that someone's going to say, well, this isn't fair, and they have to stand up and they have to say this isn't fair, and they have to stand up for themselves. No one's going to do it for them, and they don't know how to market it. They need a marketing department.
Deneen.
Well, another thing to keep in mind, that I mean, this is really a low blow, what these people did, taking advantage of the storm with Hurricane Sandy. But, you know, when it comes to the media, in D.C. alone, over 93%, I think it is, of the reporters, they vote Democrat. So they vote Democrat, and that's what they're writing about, the liberal agenda. And this is what we see on a regular basis throughout most of the media outlets. And most families are hardworking people. They're not really in tune like we are, paying attention to what the media is doing and the consequences of big government actions.
And you, as an African-American conservative, have been brutalized by the media. Things, you know, when you consider and factor in the war on women or the dog whistles, every Republican is a racist if you listen to certain media outlets. Where are they when conservative African Americans are attacked, or conservative women like Sarah Palin? Let me go to one point here. We have the New York Times columnist Charles Blow actually said Mitt Romney, nice man, good family, hardworking, creates jobs, but he doesn't have a soul. Listen to this.
This man does not have a soul. If you open up, you know, his chest is probably a gold ticking watch in there and not even a heart. This is not a person. This is just a robot who will do whatever it takes, whatever he's told to do to make it to the White House.
Yeah, good.
It's continuous, and I think it's even going to get worse with Obama being in the White House, because you're going to have these reporters who are just covering for Obama, and what they're going to do is play the race card, even though it's his failed policies that are harming those he claims he wants to help. He says he's for the middle class, but his regulations and his policies are killing the middle class.
You know, Sean, let me bring Ambassador Bolton in here. We'll give you, you're mic'd up, then we'll give it to either one. Yeah, Ambassador.
Well, I think the Republican Party is not capable of dealing with the media. I think other institutions have to do it, because the media is not going to be fixed. There's no way to make them fair and balanced. The way to deal with them is to break their cartel. There are no longer 3 dominant television networks. There are a lot more. There's the internet. There's talk radio. That's the way to reduce their influence, because you're not going to change their bias.
Yeah, it's true. All right, let me go to maybe the most egregious. Then we'll get Jedediah, Monica, David, everybody else in here. All right. Maybe it was when the whole Trayvon Martin case came up. We remember that NBC News edited the tape, and now they're being sued for it. But we're going to play the edited portion followed by the original call, which is distinctly different, to point out, I think, a big case of media bias. They didn't just play it once. They played it numerous times on NBC. Watch this.
This guy looks like he's up to no good. He looks black.
Did you see what he was wearing?
Yeah, a dark hoodie.
Sanford Police Department.
Hey, we've had some break-ins in my neighborhood, and there's a real suspicious guy. This guy looks like he's up to no good, or he's on drugs or something. It's raining, and he's just walking around looking about.
Okay, and this guy, is he white, black, or Hispanic?
He looks black.
So they edit out of this, is he white, black, or Hispanic? Jedediah.
Well,
I'll get to you, David.
They want to own the narrative. They want to control the narrative that's out there. This is not about reporting anymore. So that leaves all these citizen journalists out there that really have to do the job that the mainstream media should be doing, and do the digging and do the investigative reporting and show all of the facts that the mainstream media isn't reporting. This was a serious injustice that they performed, that any respectable organization should edit a tape to try to control the narrative that's out there is despicable.
Yeah, it is. David.
You
know, one of the things that's going on here, and Jedediah talks about new media, you can't fight devils with angels. And to go back to the ambassador's point, you're not going to fix the big 3. You're not going to fix the alphabet networks. So what we have to do is fight them on their own turf, and in some cases as hard as them. Think of what we've done with new media and with talk radio. We've got to literally combine our efforts, talk in new media and other outlets, because we have a larger reach when we work that way. And we've got to stop playing nice. We're too intellectual, Sean. We keep trying, and we do. Conservatives,
you say that to a liberal, they think every conservative is dumb.
Right, but the thing is, we think that they're going to process the same way we do. But they're acolytes, and they act and they defend, and that's why the race card matters when policies fail. So let's fight them as devils on their ground in the same way.
The headline out of this show is "You Call Liberals Devils."
Yeah, and by the way,
Media Matters is going to love you.
To the conservatives out there, let me remind you what Andrew Breitbart said. If you can't sell freedom, you suck. We've got to start selling what we're about. Not worry.
Really good. Well said.
They're going to attack us. Don't worry about what they say. Let's do what we need to do.
Monica, real quick,
George
last
Zimmerman
thing.
is suing NBC over that doctored tape, and good for him, because this gets to your point about tactics. You can't just sit back and take it. Even if you're held in custody, as George Zimmerman is, he is now suing NBC. What that
They held
tape
back
shows
the picture
you,
of his broken nose,
correct, and
his
what
injuries.
what that shows you is it's bigger than politics. You know, we talk about how the left-wing media will do anything to protect Obama, and that is true. But it's ideology. Ideology trumps everything, whether it's the far left wing, President Obama, Democrats in Congress, Trayvon Martin. They will let the truth fall away in support of their own narrative.
All right, I promise we're going to get everybody in. Prem Posel, we got a special segment. You're going to have our big crescendo tonight, which we're looking forward to. And Hugh Hewitt, promise we'll get you in the next segment coming up. Now, it isn't a secret that the mainstream media is in the tank for President Obama. Coming up next, Prem Posel will reveal, well, how they helped him win a second term, and that and much more coming up on this special Media Mash edition of Hannity. Glad you're with us. Welcome back to the special Media Mash edition of Hannity. Now, when it came to covering the 2012 presidential election, it was clear the so-called journalists in the mainstream media were willing to do everything in their power to make sure that President Obama would win back the White House. And as a result, my next guest says that 2012 was the end of the world for professional journalism. Joining me now to explain why is the president of the Media Research Center, Brent Bozell. Sir, how are you? Good to see you. Appreciate you being with us. Why?
Well, I think any serious journalist should be looking for a different career right now. Rather than work at one of the networks or work for the New York Times or work for the Washington Post, they have surrendered all semblance of objectivity. They don't even try to go in that direction. What you saw in 2012 were a couple of things that we've never seen before. One was the suppression of news, where they actually censored news. That news that we know about because we might watch Fox News. But if you watch ABC, NBC, and CBS, you didn't know about Fast and Furious. You didn't know about Benghazi. You didn't know about so many of these scandals. So that was one of them. The other one, as we've talked about, was cooking the books, was actually editing footage. They did it to Mitt Romney at the Wawa, where it would make him look like an idiot. Yeah. They did it to George Zimmerman. We've never seen this before. So I think any idea of rules of journalism, they're forever gone.
All right, let's go to some tape here. Remember after the first debate, and the president didn't do very well, and then Al Gore went out there and said, well, it could have been the altitude. Great excuse. All right, for Al Gore, he's a big liberal, but Diane Sawyer in a sober moment.
Your supporters have been saying this wasn't a bad night. He didn't show up.
It just looked like to me he really didn't want to be there. His mind wasn't on it. He didn't want to engage.
This is legendary Democratic strategist James Carville.
Well, as I said, there's no doubt that I can make a better case, which is why I'm so looking forward to Tuesday.
But again, why did it happen? Al Gore said, was it the altitude?
Well, you're so good. We worship you so much. Why? Was it the altitude? Was Al right?
I don't recall her having the same interview with Mitt Romney after the third debate. Why? Why did that happen? They were shell-shocked. They were shell-shocked that this man that they believe is God somehow was brought down to earth as a mere mortal. So they made fools of themselves. Yeah. I mean, Carville can do that, and Al Gore is a fool. But Diane Sawyer purports to be a serious anchor woman.
That's the difference. All right. Now, during the election, remember there was a story about Mitt Romney and that he was a big bully. Wow, this became big news. Now, remember, President Obama admitted to smoking pot and doing drugs and snorting cocaine and all sorts of things. It wasn't a big examination into that, but there was Mitt Romney bullying in high school.
Good evening. As we begin, there is a surprising turn of events on the campaign trail. Presidential candidate Mitt Romney accused of bullying a very vulnerable fellow student when he was in high school.
Prep school bully, Mitt Romney responds to a report that as a teenager, he led a bullying incident of a classmate who later came out as a gay. He says he doesn't recall it, but is sorry if anyone was hurt.
He didn't even remember it.
Yeah. You know, I can see Newt Gingrich as a bully. I can see Pat Buchanan as a bully. I can see Brent Bozell as a bully. Maybe Sean Hannity. But Mitt Romney? Mitt Romney, a bully? Come on. Yeah. I mean, that story was just so goofy from the very beginning. And it was 47 years ago. Who the heck cares? We're talking about the leader of the free world, not somebody what he did when he was 14 or 17 or something, cutting somebody's hair.
But they made it into a big, that was their lead. We begin tonight, ABC News, NBC News with Brian Williams. And tonight, Mitt Romney, the bully. We have all the details. We go live to a special. Come on. It's so sanctimonious. I said in 2008, Brent, that journalism was dead. It really is. And people need to, I think, understand that as they consume information. Let me go to, during the election, the networks tried to distort the GOP, the so-called war on women. We never heard the end of it. Watch.
Are you prepared to leave this gathering and own the fact that the platform of this party allows a woman who has been raped, no exception, but to carry that child to term?
A lot of women look at the Republican platform on abortion, contraception, a number of issues, and ask the question whether Republicans have women's best interests at heart.
What a question.
Here's what's important here for the readers, the viewers to understand. Barack Obama did what he did on this issue because that was his path for victory. That was sheer political calculation. But the media carried his water for him. That wasn't a pure political calculation on their part. They were just doing his bidding. They knew these questions were unfair. They knew it wasn't true. And yet look at Paul Ryan having to defend himself for something he didn't do.
How did Barack Obama, and I brought this up a lot, as often as I could, how did he get away with taking $1 million from Bill Maher, who called Governor Palin the C word, the B word? He went after Governor Palin's children, Rick Santorum's children, called Michelle Bachmann horrible names. How did they get away with that double standard?
Double standard here. Look, Mitt Romney had to worry about people with cameras in private meetings. Barack Obama can be as public as he wants to with the cameras there, and he knows he's not going to be called. This is what I mean about the censorship. They just simply did not report things, like the finances. Where did all this money come from? They've been asking that question since 2008.
Look at CNN. They played the song Stupid Girls when doing a piece on Governor Palin. It's just another example. Watch.
Stupid girls, stupid girls, stupid girls.
Sarah Palin is apparently hungry for chicken and controversy.
Where do you begin?
Well, the Stupid Girls is only exceeded by Stupid Explanation by CNN, where they said it had nothing to do with the news. It had nothing to do with the guest. And then they said it, but it was a wrong choice. But of course it did. Every music segment you put in is put in for a reason. It's attached to the guest. So for them to deny reality explains why the average viewership of CNN is about
That's why on my radio show I'd play cuts of Obama saying the purpose was to inhale. I'd play Teenage Wasteland.
People who are turning off your radio show because they've reached their destination, there are more people who have stopped watching you at the end of the show than will ever begin watching CNN. Do you know that their audience is down to about 300,000 daytime now?
I don't know that. Thank you. All right. Now, coming up at the end of the program, Brent is going to reveal the single most outrageous example of media bias in 2012. Coming up next, we'll have more on the media's handling of the 2012 election with our audience of experts. Plus, we expose how so-called journalists are aiding the White House in covering up facts in the Benghazi terror attack that killed 4 Americans, and much more as we continue the special edition of Hannity. Welcome back to the special media bias edition of Hannity, and we continue now with our reaction with a great panel of guests here. Hugh Hewitt, I want you and everybody else to watch this. Remember, we keep hearing about a war on women and Republicans are the racist party. Let's look at the attacks against one congressman this election cycle, Colonel Congressman Allen West. By the way, an American war hero. Watch this.
That crap crazy Republican Congressman Allen West, the constant spewer of hatred and lies, has got to be stopped.
What started this whole ban today had people of a lot less IQ than you, and certainly a lot less business sense, like Alan West, and some of the real screwballs out there are following the bans you're leading.
Alan West has been allowed to go off the reservation. When you're off the reservation for that long, I think you lose sight of where your boundaries are in any kind of, you go off into crazy land, and you forget that there is such a thing as sane land.
Hugh Hewitt, this was the accusation that the Republicans, conservatives in this country are racist and they're against women. We just played Sarah Palin. Here is a war hero, an American hero, African-American. Look what they say about it.
It's a Linskyite, Sean. You target, you isolate, you ridicule, you remove. Next person that's going to happen to is soon-to-be Senator Tim Scott. Whenever someone threatens the left identifies, isolates, targets, and removes. And so he's going to have that coming, and it's not unusual, and it will continue. Whenever someone stands up, puts their head above like Colonel West does, in comes the left's brigade over on MSNBC and others. You mentioned Media Matters earlier. They're far ahead of us on the internet, Sean. We get slaughtered on social media, and they're very good at it. Until we re-up and rearm and get into that game, we're just going to see it again and again and again.
Yeah.
And the right goes out of its way to avoid being called racist, and you wonder what good it does them. Remember, in both Mitt Romney's campaign and John McCain's campaign, Jeremiah Wright was off the table. They refused to engage on him.
I know more than anybody because I was excoriated for bringing it up.
What good did it get them? It got them Charles Blow saying Mitt Romney will do anything to get elected. No, he won't.
Yeah. Rose?
Sorry, Sean. Yeah, I wanted to say, you know what? The left has been defining us. They're telling our story, and it's a work of fiction. And what we need to do, I think, is use the grassroots advocacy groups and have them develop some commercials or something that gets out there and tells our story. I mean, you could start out with a commercial, 60-second commercial that says, you might think that more money, more taxes means more money goes to the government, but that's not true, and here's why. I think that we really need to focus. We need to tell our own story, and I'm sick and tired of allowing these people to define who we are, and they continue to do it as long as we allow them to.
Because I spoke with Deneen Borelli earlier. David and I have talked on air about it. Ambassador, you too. You were appointed to the UN. There was a vicious campaign because you're a conservative to tear you up and personally destroy you, the politics of personal destruction.
Well, this is part of how they go after Republican administrations trying to staff the government. The media abet the congressional Democrats who try and keep control of different pieces of the government. And it means even if you elected a reforming, conservative Republican president, he or she would have enormous difficulty governing Washington. And that's their objective, to make it a permanent bureaucracy that resists election results.
Good point. Jennifer Stefano, you were a member of the Tea Party. Right. Nobody more demonized than Tea Party crowd, right?
Right. Terrible.
Racist. Breitbart offers $100,000. Give us the proof. No evidence.
No evidence. Never. And the remarkable thing, and the reason, Sean, is because we don't ever frame the debate. And the rule in debating is there's one rule. He who frames the debate wins the debate. And too often, and I'll give you an example, a terrible one, with the school shooting. You have the president and the left-wing Democrats coming out now and talking about banning guns. Now, where are the Republicans to talk about the idea of the culture, of the movies, of the gun violence in TV, of the feminist agenda that has literally ruined men and young boys in this country so that you have these 20-something kids who once used to be considered those that had it all and had everything that are now reduced to this and are sick and with mental illness. None of this is a debate.
Well, you know, Jedediah, you're a liberal. You wrote a book about being a liberal in New York.
Be a conservative.
You're a conservative woman in New York.
Right.
Probably the only one, or one of very few. But seriously, it's you are in, well, Monica Crowley lives here, so you're somewhat protected. She has
exactly. And I've worked in academia for years where, you know, you're the odd man out if you're a conservative. But the point being made here by everyone is true. The GOP needs to own the narrative. And what we do in response to these things is we tiptoe around issues. We're afraid to offend. We're afraid to insult. Do you remember when Newt Gingrich called Barack Obama the food stamp president? He didn't back down. He didn't take nonsense from the media. He said, I am calling him a food stamp president because food stamp numbers have risen under his presidency. This is not about race. This is not about anything but policy. That's how you own the narrative.
All right, we're going to get to this side. Brother, look at Pat. Pat's mad. What, are you mad at me? Look at, no, he's about to throw the microphone at me. All right, we're going to come back. And coming up, when liberals become desperate, what do? Well, they play the worn-out race card, and they get a lot of help from their allies in the mainstream media. You won't believe what we're about to show you. And then later, it isn't just the White House that's trying to cover up the Benghazi terror attack that left 4 Americans dead. We expose how the media is trying to hide the truth as well. That and much more on this special edition of Hannity. Welcome back to this special Media Mash edition of Hannity. Now, for years, liberals have been trying to demonize Republicans, and to do so, they take a page out of their old, worn-out handbook, and they play the only card they have left, the race card. And it shouldn't come as a surprise that so-called journalists have picked up on their dirty tactic. And joining me now with reaction, Sirius XM radio host David Webb, and from the Wall Street Journal, Jason Riley. This is predictable as an election season comes and goes. You can go back to 1998, Missouri, Democratic Party, radio ad. If you elect Republicans, black churches are going to burn. Al Gore goes before a predominantly black audience when he's running in 2000. He goes into his preacher mode. Republicans don't want to even count you in the census. Hillary Clinton changes her cadence, her tone. It's predictable. They did it this election season. Why do they keep doing it? Because it works?
Well, I think it does work to some extent. The left likes to complain that we're not a post-racial society, but you listen to the rhetoric, Sean, and you think that's the last thing in the world that they want. I mean, take the situation with Susan Rice that we just went through. Here you had the nation's first black president, just reelected, trying to nominate the nation's 3rd black UN ambassador to become the 3rd black Secretary of State. This would be considered progress, and by any sensible definition of progress. But no, instead, the left says that any criticism of Susan Rice is rooted in racism.
Because she's a woman and it's about race.
Right. She was reduced to being a black woman instead of the credentials that she used to get the job initially. But Sean, we know they're going to play it. So now what do we do? Forget what they're going to do. That's a given. What they're going to do to Tim Scott, what they did to Mia Love, what they do to any black conservative. What we have to do is go on offense. We have to have the hell no moment for the left.
But hang on a second. Does go on offense mean I'm really not a racist, I swear?
No, it doesn't.
No,
because that's defense. Defense is the first thing we do on the right is, I'm not a racist, and we trot out, well, let me show you that we have examples. And with all due respect, you're absolutely right, but they're not going to recognize that. So the first thing we have to do is start with a cultural attitude as conservatives, which is 1, hell no. 2, I'm not because, and 3, we have to do a better job, and we need to change some of our spokesmen. If you want to be a big tent, reflect the Big Ten and go out and engage people. I'm not talking about pandering. I'm not talking about trotting out your Hispanics, your women, your blacks, whatever. I'm talking about getting people outside the election cycle and going in and working with these communities. And again, there is no race card. It's a myth. It's been ginned up by the left, but it's an effective strategy.
Let me go to the media side of this, because this is part of our special tonight. Everything at NBC is a dog whistle. If you say Chicago, it means you're racist. You use the term urban, it's obviously must be racist. It's gotten so out of control, but they are advancing as the press team, or the extension of the press team of the White House of Barack Obama and his re-election team this year, that narrative. Watch this.
It was just very frustrating to watch a guy lie to the American people and not be counterpunched because we were afraid he's going to be called an angry black man. When I see the president, I don't see a black man.
This stuff about getting rid of the work requirement for health, for welfare is dishonest. Everyone's pointed out it's dishonest, and you are playing that little ethnic card there. He keeps saying Chicago, by the way. Have you noticed? Chicago. It keeps saying Chicago. That's another thing that sends that message. This guy's helping the poor people in the bad neighborhoods, screwing us in the burbs.
There's a lot of black people in Chicago.
Dog whistle's a dog whistle, Clarence. A trumpet call is another. Shock and jive has a particular ethnic connection. Not necessarily bad in all cases. It's slang. It doesn't mean evil. Right. But to throw it at the president as an ethnic shot, it's pretty blatant.
Without getting into the argument as to whether he is taking the president out of context over the build it business, he is still using the term foreign. And I'm telling you, this is happening every day. It is a dog whistle.
Grand wizard crowd over there. Anyway, look at Howard. Let's take a look at this.
I resent that. Now, come on. Now, what is this grand wizard nonsense?
Okay, I'm just saying the far-right party. All right, I'll relax.
We're Ku Klux Klan. Give me a break. You don't go there with me on that.
Okay, great. All right? Great. Okay, good. Thank you. There's none of those problems over there. All those birthers out there.
Dog whistles, workfare, Chicago, urban, foreign. Republican just comes out, so grand wizard.
Again, they're going to do this, so what do? We have to get better at our strategy. We have to stop for a minute, ignore what they're going to do, not ignore it, but realize they're going to do it, and then go out and deal with them head to head. Remember earlier when I said you can't fight devils with angels? Well, if you're going to fight them, you have to fight them on their own turf in a way.
But wait a minute, but they use a technique that is beyond insulting, and frankly, I think is evidence of their own personal bias, is because any African-American conservative, we discussed this earlier with Deneen Borelli, if you're African-American in this country and you're a conservative, you're an Uncle Tom, you're a sellout.
Uncle Ruckus, you name it, it's going to be used.
It is used with regularity.
You're self-hating.
So whatever the term, more insulting than anything.
What's sad is that this comes from the top down, from President Obama on down. This campaign was about race baiting. He sent out his vice president to say Republicans wanted to put you back in chains. He sent out his attorney general to say that there was a plot. A black attorney general, the head of the criminal justice system in the United States, was sent out on the campaign trail to politicize the Justice Department and say that Republicans had a plot to steal the franchise back from blacks. So this irresponsible rhetoric.
The new Black Panthers with batons and
the irresponsible rhetoric starts at the top, and the media runs with it.
But it goes to a cultural thing. We have to change in this country, and this isn't a Democrat or Republican issue. As Americans, we have become complacent. We have become accepting of what's being shoved down our throats by the mainstream media. Yes, we're fighting back in conservative quarters, talk radio, your show, my show, all the things that we do. But we're not closing the loop by going out, and we're going to have to build pockets of resistance and go to them. Go to them in the colleges. Go to them in their media outlets. They're too chicken to bring me into MSNBC or these other networks. But I'll tell you what, let's not give them a choice. Let's take them on, as Brent said, head to head.
By the way, the supposedly racist Tea Party that the media has been telling us about, largely responsible for the only black member of the Senate come January.
Yeah.
Great point.
I gave up on Stockholm Syndrome. I guess I cured it myself.
Oh, it's insulting. It's rude.
It's
insulting. It's mean-spirited. It's hateful, and it happens all the time. And they get away with it, and then they flip it, and they turn it, and they accuse others of what they themselves often are guilty of.
It's Alinsky. Again, put them in the narrative and tell everybody that's it.
Guys, good to see you. Thank you. Still to come, Brent Bozell unveils the single most outrageous example of media bias in 2012. But first, the Obama administration has been given a free pass from the mainstream media when it comes to reporting the facts about the Benghazi terror attack. We're going to expose how the media is helping the White House cover up the truth, that and much more as this special edition of Hannity continues. Welcome back to the special edition of Media Mash, the 2012 year in review. Now, as we've demonstrated, reporters worked overtime in the past 12 months to help shield President Obama from his many policy failures here at home. But the aiding and abetting didn't end there. They were also helping him cover up when things went terribly awry overseas, and namely when it comes to the Benghazi terror attack. 4 Americans were killed. The U.S. ambassador was assassinated on foreign soil for the first time in decades. But that sad reality was never enough to spark the interest of the mainstream media. Instead, they sat idly by as the president, Hillary Clinton, Susan Rice, and others lied about the events that triggered the attack and about the administration's actions as the assault was being carried out. And joining me now to help go through some of the specific examples of how the press failed the American people and helped cover up the scandal, former U.S. Ambassador to the UN, John Bolton, and Fox News contributor Monica Crowley. Whatever Obama said was echoed in the media. Let's look at this, because he said it was a YouTube video. We knew better. You can always count on Chris Matthews to regurgitate whatever he's fed. Watch this.
Okay, Romney. One more Romney. Romney.
He doesn't cover up scandals in the Middle East.
What was the scandal that was covered up?
Benghazi.
What was the scandal?
Well, I mean...
Get to it. Nail it. What was the scandal?
He said there was a video. It was not about the video.
Yeah, it was about the video. Read the newspaper. Thank you. Everybody knows it's about the video. It's all about the video. Thank you very much.
Video, it's all about the video. Wrong, Chris. It wasn't about the video.
Well, it didn't have anything to do with the so-called video. And I think where the media went wrong here to help the president with his story was they simply didn't investigate it. They could have looked at whether there was a spontaneous demonstration in Benghazi. They did not. They could have found out whether there were requests for enhanced security before the September 11 attack. They did not. And they carried it along while really only Fox News, Catherine Herridge, Jennifer Griffin, were reporting, were investigating, doing what journalists are supposed to do, and kept the story alive because there was so much the mainstream media simply didn't look at.
And we knew that the Libyan president told us it was not related to the video. We had people on the ground. We had real-time video coming in. Now we learn later, because they didn't want this to come out before the election.
Exactly right. There are two things going on here, Sean. First of all, the elite mainstream media, most of whom are on the left, support Barack Obama, and they regard him as some sort of demigod who is probably incapable of making a mistake. Secondly, when there is an actual real scandal, like Fast and Furious, like Benghazi, scandals that are absolutely real, legitimate, and have body counts of American citizens at the hands of American policy, what the mainstream media then does is first try to ignore it, try to dismiss it, and then their third response is to try to turn it into simply a Fox News story, because we're the only ones who are actually trying to investigate and get to the truth. That's another way that they try to dismiss it and disregard it, so the American people don't think it's as big a story as it actually is.
Let's go just before Election Day. They were getting a little panicked about the story because it was beginning to resonate. And as Chris Matthews, we started the show tonight, said, well, thank God Sandy came. Whoever would say something like that. But the media, they were saying this is utterly contrived, this is not true. As you point out, conservatives are advancing the story.
This business about the Libya consulate has been like the October mirage. It really isn't an issue.
It's obviously been totally politicized at this point. You know, David, we were talking earlier, I lived in a civil war in Beirut for over 4 years. These are incredibly messy situations. People don't show up with uniforms. David Gregory, Al-Qaeda. Mike Murphy, Ansar Islam, you know.
How do you know?
Exactly. You know, I mean, you can have a flash mob turn into a planned thing. You can have planned people inside of a flash mob. To me, this is an utterly contrived story in the sense that this is the end of Obama's foreign policy.
Ambassador, there you have the contributions of CBS, Time Magazine, NBC, and the New York Times. That is the mainstream media.
Yeah, and part of their problem is the disconnect between their elite status, at least in parts of America, and the vast majority of the American people who know when an American ambassador and 3 of his colleagues are killed in an American consulate, it is big news. And in the middle of a presidential campaign, you bet they expect the 2 candidates who are vying to be the commander-in-chief to talk about why Americans are being killed and nothing's being done about it.
And by the way, Tom Friedman, Joe Klein, the rest of the elite mainstream media that you just showed there, Sean, they never gave President Bush the benefit of the doubt when it came to national security issues that got, in Tom Friedman's words, messy. They politicized Iraq, they politicized Afghanistan, and for them now to come out and say somehow that conservatives are politicizing Benghazi, which is this is an absolute disgrace. We have the personal representative of the President of the United States dead in the street in Benghazi, dragged through the streets, and these are our foreign policy elites in the media telling us it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but you know, there are a lot of different facets to this, because they requested security beforehand. On numerous occasions, that security was denied. Then they knew what was happening in real time. They never told the American people. Then there's the cover-up aspect of this, which ran very deep within government circles, all to protect the president so he can cruise to re-election. It worked.
Yeah, well, I think another aspect is what Gene Kirkpatrick called the blame America first syndrome. Certainly President Obama has it, but so do the mainstream media. So when the excuse comes out, it was a spontaneous reaction to something an American did critical of the Prophet Muhammad. They were instantly prepared to believe it, that it was our fault that our ambassador got killed.
You know, the media is supposed to be the fourth estate, keeping an eye on those who are in power for the rest of us. They've completely failed on that. They failed in this regard, asking the early questions about who came up with the fiction about the video, but they're also still not doing the job about what exactly are they covering up. What was the ambassador doing in Benghazi? Was there gun running going from Libya into Syria? Was there a terrorist detention facility being operated by this administration there, which would be a real policy scandal for Obama? We don't know. We're speculating, but the media is not doing the investigating.
Guys, thank you both. Good to
Pleasure.
see you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Coming up, Brent Bozell, he unveils the most disgusting example of media bias from 2012. That is next, straight ahead. And welcome back to this special Media Mash edition of Hannity. Now, throughout the past hour, we've shed some light on how the mainstream media and how biased they were in their reporting in 2012. But what was the single worst example of them all? Brent Bozell, he narrowed it down to this one. And this is what he picked. Watch.
The land on which they formed this union was stolen. The hands with which they built this nation were enslaved. The women who birthed the citizens of the nation are second class. This is the imperfect fabric of our nation. At times we've torn and stained it, and at other moments we mend and repair it. But it's ours, all of it. The imperialism, the genocide, the slavery, also the liberation and the hope and the deeply American belief that our best days still lie ahead of us.
Brent Bozell?
You got to love these people. You know, Ambassador Bolton was talking about the Blame America crowd. This is the Hate America crowd. Genocide, imperialism, slavery. I mean, this woman doesn't even know her history. We saved the world from genocide. We could have been imperialistic. We could have run this world after 2 consecutive world wars. We're the only nation in the history of man that didn't take any terrain after World War.
My good friend Barry Farber, radio host, speaks 40 languages, maybe more now. No country has accumulated more power than the United States of America and abused it less. Pat Goodell, this is your party, Pat.
You know, I just want to say something.
Oh, boy.
You know, look, the person who allowed the media to bury Benghazi was named Mitt Romney. He's the one that took the dive in the debate, didn't mention the issue. They couldn't have avoided it if his campaign had not calculated that they thought they could win without running as a candidate. But the other thing I listened to here, and I just want to say this because I think I may be the only one here from my party or whatever, and my issue is about truth, is you people do not know how to fight. I listen to the whining. You know what? You know who owns NBC? Comcast. I have Comcast cable. It's one of the worst cable systems in the country. You know what? If the Tea Parties, if people stop subscribing to Comcast, they might get the message. You mentioned the worst example on HBO, which is owned by Time Warner, which is Bill Maher on 24 times a week doing what he does. You know what? If 500,000 people in this country told Time Warner that they would drop them unless they put Dennis Miller, it's not free speech. That's paid speech.
Can I just stop you for a second?
Democrats fight. You don't fight.
Well, I think I agree about Mitt Romney and the third debate. I thought it was terrible, and I was writing people at the time of that debate saying, "What is he doing?" You're right about that. I don't agree with boycotts, and I'll tell you why.
I didn't call it a boycott. I just said
You
it's
call
not.
it what you
We're not
want.
talking about
If I
free
get rid of
speech.
Comcast-
We're talking about paid speech.
All right,
you don't have to subscribe to them.
You've got to
You go
understand
DirecTV.
the voices that will be silenced first and quickest and more often are going to be conservative voices.
They do that anyway, Sean.
Sean,
They do that to Fox. They do it to everyone else. You lose.
I'm
when
against
you don't fight
boycotts.
them.
I believe in free speech.
Sean, not a boycott. Let me back Pat up here. Let me back Pat up with a simple thing.
Go ahead.
I call it vote with your remote. Which means that while we have to watch and we have to do our jobs to look at them, that American can turn around, like Pat says, and say, we're not going to watch you because the advertisers look at those TV ratings and go, I'm not buying you, Comcast. I'm not buying Bill Maher, HBO. So you turn them off. When people turn Sean Hannity on, the advertiser says, I'm going to buy it.
You're going to say off.
No, but listen, this is the free market. When you're being watched more versus a CNN, advertisers are going to buy you. You're going to make money. You're going to prosper. When they're not watching exactly as Pat says,
let me say this.
Then people are going to turn them off and they eventually
there
lose.
are organized efforts to silence conservative voices. Color of Change, Brent Bozell,
Again, we
Rush,
know they're gonna try.
Glenn Beck, Sean Hannity, Fox News. Mary.
But you know what? If we had a leader in the Republican Party, this would not be as much of a problem. We need someone like Chris Christie on a national stage, and I think that's why he's so popular in New Jersey.
On who we think. Don't give it back to Pat.
We need a leader. There's no leader out there who's going to fight.
Yes,
I think it's the American people who need to stand up and push back. Another issue that is not talked about in the media is crony capitalism. Obama's picking winners and losers when it comes to energy. General Electric gets millions of dollars of our tax dollars for GE CEO Jeff Immelt because he's lobbying the president for this money. People need to realize that that's our money that's being used against us, and that's just wrong.
That's a good point. Jennifer?
And this is a stunning moment. I'm going to agree with Pat on two fronts. Number one, Comcast is awful, and I'm from Philadelphia, so I suffered from it for years. But number two, where he's really right, we have got
No, that's my point.
We have got to go for the jugular, Sean. He's right. We got to fight.
I didn't talk about suppressing speech because you're right about that. What I said is this is not free speech. Bill Maher, people pay for that. You pay for it in HBO. You don't have to take HBO. That's not free speech.
Listen, I like HBO, but I don't like
But did you hear me? I said, no, make them put Dennis Miller on. Why doesn't he have a comedy show
Because
on
he's
there?
on the Fox News channel, and we're not going to share him. That's why.
But Sean,
Sean, he's right about
I got to
that
go.
for the
We're out of time. Hey, thank you all. And happy holidays to everybody, and Happy New Year. Thank you
Merry
all for being with
Christmas.
us. That's all the time we have left tonight. As always, thank you for being with us.